Hello. From the frozen forests of Canada to the lover's lanes of Virginia, 6 chilling cases, 6 nameless shadows, and not a single conviction. In this video, you'll enter the world of serial murderers who vanished without a trace, where fear lasts longer than justice. Are you ready? 1. The Long Island serial killer, Lisk, the ghost of Gilgo Beach. It began with a phone call. On May 1st, 2010, 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert dialed 911 in a frantic panic, claiming someone was after her. She was last seen running barefoot through the quiet, gated community of Oak Beach, Long Island. The call lasted 23 chilling minutes, but when police arrived, Shannon was gone. Months later, during a routine training exercise, a K-9 unit stumbled upon something unexpected: human remains. As authorities combed the desolate stretch of Gilgo Beach off Ocean Parkway, they uncovered more bodies, 4 within mere days. All were women, all wrapped in burlap sacks. All had worked as escorts, and this was only the beginning. By 2011, the body count had risen to at least 10 victims, with some estimates suggesting more. Among them were women, a man dressed in women's clothing, and even a toddler. Many had been missing for years. All were disposed of with clinical precision, suggesting an organized, methodical predator, likely with experience in law enforcement or medical knowledge. What made this case so haunting wasn't just the brutality, it was the silence. No known suspect, no solid forensic evidence, no clear motive. Whoever Lisk was, he didn't act out of sudden rage. His killings were premeditated, patterned, and patient. He stalked the edges of society, targeting sex workers, people he believed wouldn't be missed. He used burner phones, fake names, and encrypted communications to lure victims. He watched them vanish into the void, certain he would not be caught. And for over a decade, he wasn't. The psychological profile crafted by FBI profilers pointed to a white male, aged 30 to 50, intelligent, possibly married, and living in or near Long Island. He likely held a job that allowed him privacy, mobility, and control. The way he wrapped bodies and spaced his kills hinted at someone who viewed the victims as disposable objects, trophies rather than people. Then in 2023, a major break. Investigators arrested Rex Heuermann, a married Manhattan architect, in connection to the first 4 victims, the Gilgo 4. DNA evidence and digital forensics linked him to the crimes. He matched the profile almost too perfectly. But here's the twist. Many experts now believe Heuermann may not be the only killer. The varied MOs, different victim types, and time gaps suggest more than one person may be responsible. The Long Island serial killer case leaves us with questions more disturbing than answers. What if there are multiple predators working the same area? What if one of them is still out there, waiting, watching? The shadows of Gilgo Beach still whisper, and we are left listening. 2. The West Mesa Bone Collector, Death in the Desert. Albuquerque, New Mexico, a city known for desert sunsets and dry winds. Winds that, in 2009, uncovered a secret graveyard. It began with erosion. Heavy rains washed away layers of dirt on the barren land known as the West Mesa, a vast stretch of undeveloped sand and scrub just outside the city. A local woman walking her dog noticed what looked like a human bone. It was. Within days, authorities unearthed a total of 11 female bodies and an unborn fetus, all buried in shallow graves. Most were young Latinas. All had vanished between 2003 and 2005. There was no immediate explanation, no eyewitnesses, no suspects, but there were patterns. Each victim had ties to drugs and sex work. Many were last seen in a specific zone along East Central Avenue, an area plagued by crime and known for prostitution. These weren't random killings. The victims were chosen, stalked, and taken over years. Their bodies, later confirmed to have been stripped of identification, were buried in a carefully spaced layout, indicating the killer had time, privacy, and a twisted sense of control. This wasn't frenzy, it was ritual. The media dubbed the unknown murderer the West Mesa Bone Collector. The case chilled law enforcement to its core. The burial site suggested the killer had access to construction or landscaping equipment and knew the land well. Perhaps someone who worked for the city or in real estate development before the housing boom ended. The FBI constructed a profile: a white or Hispanic male, mid-30s to 50s, organized, socially functional, possibly even charismatic enough to gain the trust of his victims. He may have kept trophies. He almost certainly knew how to manipulate vulnerable women, especially those living on the margins. Over time, suspicion circled around several men. One, a former strip club security guard, had been previously investigated for sex trafficking. Another, an ex-boyfriend of one of the missing girls, died by suicide after police questioned him. Yet no charges were filed, no DNA match, no confession. The desert stayed silent. What makes the West Mesa case so haunting isn't just its brutality, it's its invisibility. 11 women vanished, and no one noticed for years. These victims weren't high profile. They were poor, addicted, alone. The killer exploited that invisibility. And then he stopped. Or did he? Police believe the killer may have fled or died, but some investigators suspect he simply moved, changed hunting grounds, learned from his mistakes. To this day, new missing persons reports from the area still spark fears that the bone collector has returned. We may never know who carved death into the West Mesa, but we know this: the sand holds secrets, and the wind, someday, might reveal more. 3. The Phantom of Florence, the monster who hunted lovers. Italy, the land of romance, wine, and ancient ruins. But between 1968 and 1985, the Tuscan hills bore witness to something far darker, a phantom that turned lovers' lanes into killing fields. They called him Il Mostro di Firenze, the monster of Florence. The nightmare began on August 21, 1968. A couple was found shot dead in their car outside Florence. At first it seemed isolated, but over the next 17 years, 7 more couples, all attacked while parked in secluded countryside spots, were murdered in chillingly similar ways. The man was shot, and the woman mutilated. Some say the killer removed sexual organs with surgical precision, suggesting anatomical knowledge and a personal vendetta against female sexuality. Florence was paralyzed by fear. Young lovers avoided the woods. Parents warned their children. The media turned the killer into myth, part man, part ghost. Each murder felt like a ritual, precise, methodical, cold. But who was he? Investigators formed the theory of a lone killer, someone who despised intimacy or had been rejected, perhaps even someone with military or medical experience. Others proposed a more sinister idea: a group, maybe a cult, responsible for the murders. One theory, known as the Sardinian Trail, traced the gun used in the killings, a .22 Beretta, to a family feud dating back to the first double murder in 1968. Dozens were investigated. Several suspects were arrested, imprisoned, and released. At one point, police believed they had their man, Pietro Pacciani, an abusive farmer with a violent past. But despite circumstantial evidence and intense media coverage, he was acquitted. When he died in 1998, the mystery remained. Books were written, journalists investigated. Even American author Douglas Preston, co-author of The Monster of Florence, was caught in the legal crossfire after challenging Italian prosecutors. The deeper he dug, the stranger it got. Corruption, misdirection, obsession. Law enforcement seemed as lost in conspiracy as in truth. And yet the monster was always one step ahead, vanishing without trace after 1985. Many believe he died. Others believe he still walks the olive groves, long retired but forever unpunished. Psychologically, the monster defies easy profiling. The surgical nature of the crime suggests knowledge. The consistency suggests planning. But the choice of lovers, often vulnerable, isolated, trusting, points to profound hatred. Perhaps he saw them as sinners, or reminders of something he could never have. His violence wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. Florence, the cradle of the Renaissance, was scarred by this unseen predator. He made passion into punishment. And even now, decades later, the name Il Mostro evokes a fear that no time can erase. Because the monster of Florence wasn't just a killer, he was a message. The Servant Girl Annihilator, America's forgotten boogeyman. Before Jack the Ripper stalked London's alleys, there was another predator, one older, crueler, and even more mysterious. In the sweltering summer of 1884, in Austin, Texas, someone began killing women in the dead of night. They called him the Servant Girl Annihilator. The name sounds almost cartoonish today, but in the 1880s, this was anything but fiction. Over 1 year, 8 people, mostly African-American servant women, were brutally murdered, often in their own beds. Many were dragged into backyards, assaulted, and mutilated with such savagery that even hardened police officers were shaken. The killer didn't stop there. He struck at white women too, escalating the panic to all levels of Austin society. No one felt safe. Not the rich, not the poor, not even the mayor's own family. Citywide fear turned to hysteria. Armed patrols, curfews, and police dogs were deployed. Citizens slept with pistols under pillows. It was one of the first times America had to grapple with the terror of a serial killer, a concept not yet defined at the time. The timeline was erratic but purposeful, always at night, always silent, often targeting sleeping women in small, unguarded homes. Windows would be pried open with a chisel. The victims were dragged out, sometimes killed alongside loved ones who tried to intervene. And always, always, there was overkill. One woman was stabbed with a steel rod through her ear. Another had her head nearly severed. This was not mere murder, it was rage. Despite over 400 arrests and dozens of interrogations, no suspect ever stood trial. Theories flew: a deranged butcher, a vengeful lover, a former soldier with PTSD. Some even believed the killer may have fled to England and resurfaced as Jack the Ripper 4 years later. It's speculative, but the parallels are eerie. Nighttime attacks, surgical mutilations, no witnesses, and complete police bewilderment. What little psychological insight we have suggests someone deeply methodical. He was able to slip in and out of homes without alerting neighbors. He used tools to break in, but left no fingerprints, though at the time, fingerprinting wasn't yet a forensic practice. His victims, mostly marginalized black women, may have been chosen for their vulnerability, but his progression to white women indicates a killer driven more by opportunity and compulsion than race alone. To this day, the Servant Girl Annihilator remains one of America's earliest and most terrifying unsolved serial killers. What's perhaps most disturbing is how forgotten he is, overshadowed by more famous murderers, buried in dusty archives. But for 1 year, he held an entire city hostage, and then he vanished. No closure, no justice, just a legacy soaked in blood and silence. 5. The Highway of Tears, a trail of vanishing lives. In the dense wilderness of British Columbia, a road winds through more than 700 kilometers of haunting beauty, snow-capped mountains, thick forests, and cold silence. It's called Highway 16, but to many it's known by another name, the Highway of Tears. Since 1969, dozens of women and girls, most of them indigenous, have vanished or been found murdered along this stretch of road between Prince George and Prince Rupert. Officially, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, recognize 18 cases. Indigenous communities, however, say the true number is well over 80. The victims vary in age, some as young as 12. Many were last seen hitchhiking, some were heading to work, school, or simply to visit family. And then, nothing. No remains, no witnesses, no answers. The vast, unforgiving terrain seems to swallow their stories whole. And somewhere in that silence, a predator, or predators, has thrived. The haunting aspect of the Highway of Tears isn't just the brutality, it's the systemic indifference. For years, families reported loved ones missing, only to be dismissed by authorities. She probably ran away, they were told, or she'll turn up. That apathy allowed a killer, or multiple killers, to operate undisturbed for decades. Some investigators believe there is more than one murderer, possibly truckers, drifters, or locals with intimate knowledge of the terrain. Several suspects have emerged over the years, including known serial killer Cody Legabokov, convicted in 2014. Others point to Bobby Jack Fowler, an American transient linked by DNA to one of the highway's earliest victims. But no single name connects all the dots. The MOs vary. Some women were sexually assaulted, others weren't. Some bodies were found near rivers, others in remote woods. It's as if the highway attracts not one, but many monsters. Criminal profilers suggest a few things. Whoever is responsible is familiar with the landscape, confident and predatory. The isolation and sparse policing of the area offer the perfect cover. And crucially, many believe the killer, or killers, preyed on the invisibility of their victims. Poor, indigenous, transient, women that society overlooked. In 2015, after years of public outcry, the Canadian government launched a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, MMIWG. It concluded that the crisis amounted to a form of genocide, a blend of colonial violence, racism, and institutional neglect that created perfect conditions for these crimes. What's most chilling is that the Highway of Tears is still active. Women still disappear, and every time they do, the forest reclaims the secret. The wind along the highway whispers names, but justice remains out of reach. Because this isn't just a case, it's a mirror. And what it reflects is how easily the most vulnerable can vanish without a trace. 6. The Colonial Parkway Murders, Lovers Lost in the Fog. Virginia, late 1980s. The Colonial Parkway, an idyllic stretch of road connecting historic sites like Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown, winds through thick woods and runs parallel to the James River. It was the perfect place for couples seeking solitude. But someone turned it into a hunting ground. Between 1986 and 1989, 4 young couples were murdered along or near the Colonial Parkway. The cases shared disturbing patterns. Lovers killed while parked, no clear signs of robbery, and cars found in eerie stage conditions. Doors left open, wallets untouched, keys still in the ignition. And the killer or killers were never caught. The first victims, Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Dowski, were found in their car, submerged off an embankment. Both women had their throats slashed so deeply they were nearly decapitated. Oddly, diesel fuel had been poured around the vehicle, likely an attempt to burn evidence. But the car was never set on fire. A year later, David Nobling and Robin Edwards vanished. Their bodies were discovered on the banks of the James River. Robin had been shot. David's cause of death remains undetermined. Then came Richard Call and Cassandra Haley, last seen in 1988 after a college party. Their car was found in a rest stop, clothes inside, but the couple was never found. Their disappearance remains one of the most haunting in the series. The final known victims were Daniel Lauer and Anna Maria Phelps, discovered in 1989 near an I-64 rest stop. Their skeletal remains were found under a blanket. Cause of death couldn't be determined, but their personal belongings were oddly undisturbed. The connection between the cases? Intimacy, vulnerability, ritualistic precision, no witnesses, no apparent motive, and no fingerprints. What made the Colonial Parkway murders so terrifying was the illusion of safety. These weren't isolated alleys or inner-city streets. These were historic sites, family picnic spots, scenic lookouts, the kind of places people felt relaxed, comfortable. But someone used that against them. FBI profilers suggested the killer was likely someone familiar with law enforcement procedures, possibly even posing as an officer to gain trust. Several families claimed their children had mentioned being stopped or followed by someone with a badge. The precision of the attacks, the avoidance of robbery, and the methodical disposal of the bodies all point to someone organized, intelligent, and deeply manipulative. For decades, victims' families have pleaded for answers. Investigators created a task force. Cold case units reopened files. But forensic technology was limited in the 80s, and evidence had degraded. The passage of time became the killer's greatest ally. Some believe the murders were unrelated. Others insist it's the work of a single predator, possibly even one who shifted styles to confuse police. There are theories of multiple killers working in tandem, or copycats mimicking the original. But after more than 35 years, one truth remains. The Colonial Parkway killer was never caught, and somewhere out there, they may still be hiding in plain sight, older, invisible, forgotten. Or worse, watching from the woods, waiting. These six unsolved serial murder cases, stretching across continents and centuries, aren't just about death. They're about silence, the failure of systems, the vulnerability of the forgotten, and the chilling truth that some monsters vanish without a trace. They remind us that not all killers wear a mask. Some wear smiles, uniforms, or the quiet confidence of a predator who knows how to disappear. And while justice may sleep, it never dies. One clue, one witness, one breakthrough. That's all it takes to bring a ghost back into the light.